Imagine a world reeling from the ashes of war, where entire cities lay in ruins and survivors carried memories too painful to speak. In 1945, as World War II ended, the world faced a question it had never asked before. How do you hold an entire regime accountable for crimes beyond imagination? The answer began in a city called Nuremberg. Here, inside a battered palace of justice, representatives from the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and France took their seats. Their mission: put Nazi leaders on trial for war crimes, crimes against peace, and crimes against humanity. For the first time in history, the architects of a state-sponsored nightmare would be judged by the world. Sitting in the dock were 24 of Hitler's closest lieutenants, generals, officials, propagandists. From Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, to Rudolf Hess, Hitler's own deputy. Their crimes included orchestrating genocide, waging aggressive war, and enslaving millions. But the trials were about more than punishing evil. They were about establishing a record and creating new laws for a future that could never forget. The prosecutors presented evidence so overwhelming it stunned even the judges. Films and photographs of concentration camps, meticulous Nazi records listing trainloads of human cargo, survivor testimonies describing gas chambers and mass shootings. For many, it was the first time the full horror of the Holocaust and Nazi atrocities became undeniable. The chief U.S. prosecutor, Robert Jackson, declared. Robert Jackson said, "The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant, and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored." But even here, justice was complicated. Some accused claimed they were just following orders. Others insisted they were innocent, or shifting blame to the dead. Witnesses described how propaganda fanned the flames of hatred, how seemingly ordinary men became executioners, how a modern state turned murder into bureaucracy. In the end, the tribunal handed down its verdicts. 12 prominent Nazis were sentenced to death, including Göring, Joachim von Ribbentrop, and Wilhelm Keitel. Others received prison terms ranging from 10 years to life. 3 were acquitted. But Göring, the highest-ranking Nazi at Nuremberg, cheated the hangman. He committed suicide in his cell with a hidden cyanide capsule just hours before his scheduled execution. The Nuremberg Trials lasted nearly a year, but their ripples changed the definition of justice forever. For the first time, crimes against humanity became a permanent part of international law. The world agreed. Leaders could be held accountable for atrocities, not just in the name of their own state, but against all of humanity. Nuremberg also shaped how later generations would pursue justice. The trials inspired new courts to judge genocide and war crimes, from Rwanda to Yugoslavia to the modern International Criminal Court. And yet, the legacy of Nuremberg is tangled. Some thinkers criticized the trials as victor's justice, since only Axis leaders were prosecuted, not Allied crimes. Others argued that Nuremberg proved even those at the top could not hide behind power when facing justice. But whether you see them as justice or history's warning, the Nuremberg trials confront us with uncomfortable questions. Where does responsibility end? Can law truly make sense of evil? And is justice possible after catastrophe? As survivors' ages pass, Nuremberg remains a monument of evidence, of memory, and of a world determined, at least for a moment, not to repeat its worst chapter. Next time you hear the phrase crimes against humanity, remember it began not with a law book, but in a courtroom filled with the scars of war. What happens when nations put evil on trial? The answer began at Nuremberg, but its echo hasn't ended yet.